lighter. Just close your eyes and we can push them all away.
What's up, everybody? Hope you guys are all having a great day or night, wherever you might be. Before we get started, it's been a little bit, so if anyone in the chat can tell me if my audio is all good, would love to get started here. Just want to make sure. I know we've had some issues in the past, but it's been about 3 months since I fired up a stream, so awesome. Sounds good. Awesome, guys. Well, yeah, I'm excited to break down some thoughts here. Like I said, it's been about 3 months since I did a stream. I took like a month and a half break kind of from the markets and all. I was working on a few other things, but as crypto kind of, triggered back up back in July, I went back and, it brought a lot of my attention back. And I think we're just at a very pivotal moment in the market now. I don't post as much recently because I feel like, there's really not too much going on. I think July was fun. Obviously, we had a few weeks in August with Ethereum, but overall, I feel like the market's got to a point where, we're at like a big crossroads. And so I wanted to fire up a stream today. And, as usual, feel free to ask any questions in the chat. I'll try to get to everything that, you guys are wondering. Any requests at the end, I'd love to do. But as usual, I'll focus on Bitcoin here, Sol, Ethereum, XRP, the majors, because at the end of the day, we have a lot of people wondering, are alts going to do this? Are alts going to do that? But at the end of the day, I think that this market now is so focused on just the top 5, top 10 coins. So that's where my focus usually stays. Those are the coins that I trade. So yeah, first off, I think the biggest question I have here, even myself, we're at a point where we're at the point in the market where I think that, there's 2 roads that we can go down. And I think the first road is, this is going to follow the usual 4-year cycle theory that we've seen play out in 2018, 2022, or we're going to enter a whole new stage in this market where, we basically follow the stock market. And, if I had to guess, I would think that the 4-year cycle could be half right, meaning, at the end of Q4, sometime in Q4, we do see a larger top. Going into next year, we have a larger pullback that we might have not seen for a year or two. But maybe this isn't, the usual drawn out 60, 70% pullback on Bitcoin, because I'm sure a lot of you guys that have followed me, I've said this a lot this year. I think Bitcoin is so institutionalized now that, we're not going to see an 80% pullback. I think that there's just too much money involved. There's too many institutions that have plenty of enough money to keep this stable enough to where, that doesn't mean we don't see 20, 30, maybe 40% pullback. But I don't think that Bitcoin's going to see a 70, 80% pullback like we've seen in the past. And, I love to start off with this chart. I posted it a lot. I think starting back in basically April, like right around this time right here, where we topped out actually like February of this year before we dropped down to, 76K in April. I said that Bitcoin was pretty much on track based on the last 2 full cycles that we've had. And I absolutely love this chart. It really, to me, just proves how powerful the cycles are in crypto and just the patterns. Not even call them cycles, just the patterns that continue to repeat. And if we look at this right here is the normalized price. So this right here means like 100%, 200%, 300%, and then up here at past this means 1,000%. So this right here would be, 1,200%, 1,300%, and this is from the cycle bottom. So if we look right now, Bitcoin's basically right at the like 750%, around that since our 15K low. And if we look back like the 2022 cycle, we were basically, right, 2021, we were at about 1,100% at this exact stage. And then, of course, the 2016, 2017, we were at about, what would that be? We were at about 2,300%. So, we could see the volatility and the returns have continued to diminish, of course. But what I find interesting is right at this point back here, this was like October of last year, so almost a year ago, everything was lined up perfect, percentage-wise even. This cycle was following everything exact. And then if we see right here, this is kind of where we've flattened out. Ever since the tariff news and talk came out, we had the last 2 cycles really pop up high here. And then we're at this point now where I posted this just a few, I don't know how long ago that was, probably just a few few weeks ago, and I basically said, look, we're at the last like 100 days until, historically speaking, we've seen a top. So I think at this point, I'm taking a more, have my plan and have my levels approach instead of trying to predict exactly what happens. Because I think even if this doesn't play out, what happens now is we get everyone's emotions super high and everyone's on edge because everyone knows about this 4-year cycles now, and that's everybody's argument of why it won't happen. It's because everybody's aware of it. Everybody talks about it. Everyone throws around charts. Maybe not like this. This one I custom made, and it really shows a really cool, comparison. But overall, people understand that we're at that point in the cycle where it's like, hey, we might be reaching kind of the point where like this would be the longest cycle if we go past like October 15th. So, I want to bring this up as I think that this is important for us to all keep in mind that, we're just at that point where it's like, we're going to take two crossroads. And once I dive into the charts here, you guys will see what I mean. Like we're kind of right at that point where if Bitcoin drops below that 108 level, 108K level, I think that a lot of things might be, a little murky and a little questionable. And I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts, throw in your thoughts of whether you think this 4-year cycle is going to happen and a top's going to be in, October, November, maybe we push out another 20, 30 days or whatever. Or if we think that this is just a staircase up to, wherever, kind of like how the stock market moves. Love to hear your guys' thoughts because I know probably it's a 50-50 split. If a poll was taken of people that are in the market a lot, probably half think, the top's about to be in, then half think that, we're not going to follow that anymore. So I wanted to start off with this because I find it very powerful and very, very interesting. And, I think it's important for us to all keep this in mind when we look at these charts, that, in basically 50, 60 days, we're at the point where every cycle that we have a complete cycle has topped out. So that's my first thoughts there. Second thoughts is this is a very similar chart. This is just kind of zoomed in to show, the last, what is this? Basically the last 100 days. And the last time I ran this, I think was about a week ago. So it's about a week delayed. So, basically we haven't done much. So we're like right there. And we see that the next, month and a half, historically speaking, would be the time where we see things go crazy. Whether that means alts go crazy as well, that's to be determined because we have not followed that usual alt season, this or that. But we just know, this kind of drills home the point. The next 30, 60 days, I think, are really going to be a nail biter. And, once I break down the charts here, you guys will see what I mean. It's like we're at that point where I think the bulls need to really step up or some charts are going to be super broken, in my opinion. This right here is a very similar chart. I just wanted to throw it in here. This shows exactly what we were just looking at, but since the halving. So instead of looking at when the cycle bottom was put in, it's the halving. And we could see it's a very similar thing. This was obviously the 2012 cycle, so we don't have a complete cycle here. But if we look, we're basically right at that point. This was the 20K, 19K high in 2017. This was the 69K in 2021. And look where we're at here. It's like this last 30, 60 days is where we expect the market to go parabolic, So very interesting stuff. Let's see. I saw you guys hit a few comments here. Institutions being here only incentivizes them to dump it 70 to 80%. That's a good point, good question. I think that the bigger point here, though, is that a lot of these companies have investors. And I think that we're past the point of like, hey, let's drill to the down, drill it to the ground so institutions could get in. Now it's at the point where do these institutions want to have hundreds, thousands of phone calls from their clients, either MicroStrategy shareholders or, all the ETFs, all the institutions that have sold clients on ETFs. Do they want to have to deal with, other clients saying, hey, why is this down 70%? Why is this down 60%? That's kind of my opinion on that. And September, October for the end, reason being the cracks in the economy cannot be ignored. Yeah, it's a good point. And, if we get the rate cut this month, I believe in September, and a lot of the, metrics say we are. Historically speaking, I don't have those charts set up right now, but if some of you guys watched my streams earlier this year, you would have saw that, once that rate cut happens, we usually have like a month or two, historically speaking, going back all the way till like 2000, to where the market maybe has a little bit more juice left in it, and then we see a longer drawn out correction, So it's a good point there, and I think that's going to be very interesting. It isn't 4 years based on the halving 4-year cycles tied to the stock market liquidity. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's obviously a conversation that a lot of people have had over the last, 2, 3 cycles. We could even look at like the presidential election. The presidential election has perfectly lined up with these halvings. But at the end of the day, the halvings still have played out perfect. So we can't say it's not the halving. We can't say it's the liquidity cycle. It's really all of it. It's just all synchronized basically. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, beyond that, I think the last little chart I had up here, and then we'll dive into trading view, is just to show the volatility of Bitcoin. I ran this here. It's basically a 30-day rolling volatility, and it just shows us like, look at the volatility in 2024, 2025. I mean, Bitcoin is such low volatility now compared to what it used to be. And it's like, this proves why. It's because it's became institutionalized. There's a lot more liquidity. There's a lot more money. It takes a lot more money to move this market than it used to. So, it's kind of the point where, the last time I really had a good stream, and even when I was super active back on, X, I was saying that this market, in my opinion, now, guys, it's not a get rich quick anymore. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news. I'm sure a lot of you guys watching this, already know that, but it's like this market now, to really capitalize in this market, I think you need to master trading. Not even master, but you need to trade. You need to trade the shorter time frames to really extract from this market anymore. To just buy things and hope that they, push wherever, it really just isn't at that point anymore. And it's an unfortunate thing. I missed the 2017 and even the 2021 days. I mean, that was an awesome time when you could just buy things and make hundreds of percent without thinking about it. But I think at this point now, the market's not like that anymore. And this was inevitable. This was inevitable. So we just have to just identify it and, have our expectations in check. Because I think a lot of people still have these expectations where this market's going to do thousands and thousands of percent. And guess what? It's not impossible, but I think that the likelihood is very, very small. So yeah, let's dive over here to TradingView. And like I said, any questions, always feel free to throw them in. Love to answer any questions. Skillston said top is in once we see a prolonged per premium. Hey, he's not wrong there. That's one of my favorite indicators. Hopefully you guys have added that. I've shown all of the proof of how that's really such a good indicator, just to see like, hey, when's the market overheated? And I'm going to get to that because it's a really good point. Rose said in 2008, some institutions went under while others survived and thrived. Very possible to see the same here. I think that the crypto market really hasn't seen, besides COVID, a really strong pullback, in the global markets. So it would be new. It would be super, super new. But yeah, here is the first chart I wanted to cover here. I posted this a few days ago, but I wanted to bring it up just because I like to share simple stuff, but powerful stuff. And this is a simple but powerful chart right here, guys. We look at when the bottom was put in, we broke above, retested that previous resistance as support. Same thing happened here. We broke that 25K, broke above, retested it twice. Same thing here when the ETFs launched. ETF launch was right here, but we broke above, retested that previous resistance we had right here. And we could see right here also after the ETF launch, broke above, went up to about 74K. Later on, we hit that 49K, retested perfectly. We see our 108K here. Everyone thought it was over back here, but we perfectly retested that previous resistance. And technically speaking, we just did the same thing here back in July. Broke above that previous resistance. And what are we doing now? We're attempting to retest that. So technically speaking, guys, if we look, this right here is exactly where the market has bottomed out every time in this cycle. There's no question here that this is the exact setup we see. So that's kind of why I'm at that point where it's like, guys, if Bitcoin breaks below this level right here, it's going to be very hard to print a bullish picture. Does that mean it's cooked? No. But, technically speaking, we have 2.5 years of data here where we've had a perfect staircase pattern. And like I said in the post, logically, if you're taking a staircase up, you don't want backwards progress. And losing this 108K level would be backwards progress. So I wanted to start with this because sometimes people overcomplicate things, but to me, some of my best analysis was on the most simple stuff, and this right here to me is simple. A lot of people can understand this, and it's like this 108K level, is lost completely, that doesn't mean we just get a little fake out below. We could see that absolutely. But if we get below this and this is resistance, I mean, Bitcoin could be cooked for some time, you know? And then this opens up the question, you know, is the 4-year cycle here? Does the 4-year cycle not matter? That's beyond the point. But what it does mean is that the next month, 2, 3, 4, you know, would be pretty grim if this turns into resistance. So we're just at that point right now where that's why I'm saying, guys, it's a big crossroads in my opinion. And I think really, you know, the bulls need to step up here. I'm going to show you some order flow at the end to show that it's like, you know, there's not much buying pressure happening here. Order books are pretty clear, but we have not seen anyone really step up strong. And that's why we haven't seen a strong reaction off this level. The other thing here I wanted to show was, you know, if we look here, I'm sure you guys know the VWAP suite here. Still love VWAPs. Hopefully you guys are utilizing them to the max because they're very, very powerful. They're basically moving averages on steroids, but super powerful. And unfortunately, we've seen the same setup right now that we saw back here. And if you guys remember, this was one thing where I posted that this was basically the first thing that brought me a little bit of bearishness before we had the breakdown. Is I said, hey, we lost that quarterly VWAP. And anytime we see the loss of a quarterly VWAP, it's not usually a good thing. You know, if we could see the last time it happened here, this was a fake out, but we said we lost it here, big drop, lost it here, big drop. And sure enough, when we had it here, big drop, you know, I think that was like a 26%, about 25% drop here. You know, we see, look what's happening right now, guys. It's not the best look. I'm going to be honest. It really isn't the best look, even though we're still holding this previous resistance here, which I just talked about on that previous chart. We are still holding that, but this is kind of that first step of, okay, let's keep our eyes peeled. We might be undergoing a trend change right now. And I think the important thing is to drop down on a lower time frame and say, okay, you know, can we regain this level? And just today we saw big rejection. You know, we had NFP today, big push happen. And if we look at this on the 3-hour chart, I mean, respecting it perfectly, absolutely respecting it perfectly. So once again, I mean, I feel like I could end the stream right now about Bitcoin and just have that be the most powerful thing. Is if we can't regain that quarterly VWAP, that's our first step that we're undergoing a bearish trend change. And losing this level would be that next step where it's kind of watch out below, you know, sub 100K is probably going to be happening. So that's what I'm watching here in the next few days, next week. We need to see bulls regain this 112 or 113 level. We could see that. I think we're going to be in a good position because then it kind of follows the exact pattern we've seen over the last, you know, 5 lows throughout this cycle. But right now, guys, this is a, you know, it's a questionable thing. It's something that I think we need to really keep our eyes on. And like I said, keeping it simple, but keeping it powerful here. This VWAP here, the very powerful VWAP. And I think everyone should throw this on their chart, keep eyes on it. This can't be regained in the short term, and we're kind of just hanging out below here. I think we should be watching out below. So yeah, let's see if you guys have any questions here. Thank you, Brandon. Bits, thanks for popping in. Appreciate it, man. XRP being shitty. Yeah, I mean, you know, the whole market's been pretty shitty. Sol's probably been the strongest coin here over the last week or two. What is your TP of XRP? I'll cover XRP here pretty soon. Yeah, I mean, you know, we could think that, you know, the market needs to grab liquidity below, but I just like to look at patterns, and the patterns say that, you know, Bitcoin shouldn't be losing that 100K level, 108K level. I don't think it should be lost. So the next thing here we'll cover here is, you know, basically the premiums. So this is kind of the why that, you know, we're at the point where, you know, a little bit of conflicting information. And I like to keep it simple and have a good thesis here, but I'm not going to ignore conflicting information, and that's the spot premiums. We can see, you know, big tops are put in when we see a prolonged. Let me throw this on here so it's a little cleaner. Tops are put in when we see a prolonged loss of the spot premium. It's happened all cycle. You know, it's really been a perfect indicator. It even happened back at 69K. You see the spot premium was lost right here. Spot premium lost right here. Spot premium lost, even right there, right up here, you know, consolidated, didn't go higher, dropped down. Even when we hit this level right here, it wasn't lost too much, but it was lost. And, you know, obviously we've fallen back pretty hard so far. We're not at that point yet. So we could say that maybe that was a little bit of loss, but essentially what this metric is showing, guys, is it's showing when the perps get really excited. It's showing when people are longing, blindly logging, throwing leverage at the market, crazy emotions are high. It's in the simplest terms, it shows when the market is run by emotions. When this turns red, the market's heavy with greed. The market's heavy with optimism, hope. We get those high emotions there, and what happens? People get flushed out. So this is something I'm watching here. I think it's more powerful on Ethereum. So if we pop this back down, I'll show you guys here on Ethereum. You guys remember me posting this. The Ethereum one has been super, super, straightforward. Is we could see anytime this cycle that Ethereum lost a spot premium, doesn't mean it didn't go higher, but what it does mean is the top was put in when this was red. We had a pullback right there, right here. We haven't not seen that yet. We had a little bit here, a little bit of pop out here, but obviously went higher, so that's void. We have not seen that yet. And even right now, we could watch this thing. This thing's actually pushing higher. What that means is, either perps are really shorting hard and spot is, either pretty stable or buying, or, it's just a pretty even across the board. So I think that this is an important thing for me to keep in mind, and it keeps me optimistic. It keeps me optimistic. That if the structure we're talking about here can hold over the next week, 2-3 weeks, I think we could be in a good place for, the next month or so to see higher legs across the board, because we don't have the usual signature, and that usual signature really has not failed us. Even back here, we could see perfect right when Ethereum hit 4,700 back in 2021. We had the loss of the spot premium. So super powerful here. This in the VWAP, I feel like it's all I need to trade, on a higher time frame, should I say. Well, it's super powerful stuff there. What about the 105 to 108K area box? Does it have to be out of the box? It's a good point. Like I said earlier, it doesn't mean that we can't have a little drop below this. I guess the farthest I'll pull this down is that 105.5 to about 108K. We could see a little bit of a drop down into there. I think that the important thing would be turning this into resistance. That is where it's like, the level needs to flip. If you lose it quickly and regain it, that's not a loss. That's just a fake out. We would need to see a complete flip of the level. And, that's kind of up for our own interpretation, but that's kind of how I view that. So, yeah, 106 to 108, I think, is the good level here. Your VWAP's be pretty good in all my time frame chart. I did add it just default. That's awesome. I'm glad to hear it. Seems like 105K last level we should not lose. Yeah, it's about that. 106, 108. Dom, this isn't the hopium I came here for. You're doing awful. Well, hey guys, I'm not here to, I'm just here to break down the charts in the right way, because, a lot of people, they will sell you hopium. And, there's times where I've been pretty bullish and, a lot of the times it's worked out well. But right now, I think we're just at the point where, if we are ending the last month and a half of the cycle, guys, I'm not in the point to have really, really strong predictions. If I get some clear signals that give me really strong predictions, I'll follow them. But right now I'm kind of in that, hey, let's watch the levels and make money either way, and just be prepared for either thing. Because I still have spot holdings, that are still well in profit, some accumulated in 2022. So, I haven't sold everything. I'm still, I'm still at the point where not enough has happened here where I could just sell everything and say, hey, I'm fine missing that last nice push if we get it. So that's kind of how I'm approaching it, 90% chance we put in a new monthly low. Yeah, it's very good. Very possible to keep up the streams. One of the cleanest. Much appreciated, TB. Good, the end is near. We're all tired. Yeah. Well, we don't know the end is near. All I'm saying is, historically speaking, yes, the end is near. So yeah. And I see Guga asked, what's your stance if we do lose 106K? My stance is that the chart is broken. Does that mean that it's completely cooked for, 2 years? No. But what I think it does mean is, yeah, the chart's pretty cooked here. So I think this is a good segue into the total crypto market cap. This is something that I posted over probably the last 2 weeks. And I basically said we're at a very big point. And, kind of echoing what I've already talked about on this stream so far is we're at a big point. I posted this right when that SFP happened. Swing failure pattern, fake out. And sure enough, we've broken below that uptrend. But once again, we have not lost that previous resistance. This is equivalent to Bitcoin's 108K. The reason why this is a little bit higher and it's not hanging out there is because Ethereum kind of pushed pretty heavy in this range, so it's it pulled it up stronger than what it should have been. But if we look here, I mean, this is a big chart here. The last 3-4 years, top trend line, pretty, you can't really argue that. Bottom trend line, can't really argue that. Once again, keeping it simple here, but powerful. We're trading below that. But unlike Bitcoin, we're still holding that quarterly VWAP. So that's why it's like I like to look at this in steps. The first step would be Bitcoin, getting down here. Second step would be total losing the quarterly and this. All that happens, yeah, we're cooked, and I will be there to tell you guys. I think that we'd be cooked. We'd probably see at least a pullback down to about the 3 trillion. So, that'd probably be about a 20% pullback here. And the reason why I'm not too strong either way is because, hey, I think we're at that last 2 months in the cycle, and predicting exactly, I don't know if it's the best, value. I think that, as I've said many times, there's times to be really, really strong conviction, and there's times to be a little bit like, hey, let's have our plan, and then let's follow the plan, be a little bit reactive. Not so reactive till we wait till Bitcoin's at 95K to say it's cooked, but be reactive a little bit, not be so strong to where it's like pick one bias and be blindsided if the other one happens. No, because we're in a completely different market here, guys. So I think it's an important way to look at it. So yeah, this is total here. Like I said, I posted this. I'm going to continue to watch this. You guys throw this quarterly VWAP on your chart and kind of see what's happening here. But as of right now, it's okay. We had the first step here, losing that trend line. Not the best look. Second step would be losing the quarterly VWAP. Third step would be losing this box. At that point, it's like you could even open up shorts, in my opinion, and have plenty of juice to run there. So that's really my thoughts here, and I'll continue to update on this. Just important updates, not everyday updates if nothing really changed. And then here's total too. This is a chart that I also posted like 2-3 weeks ago probably, and it shows that, hey, we're right at that point where it's like, hey, this would be the point where the next month and a half things saw that crazy push, and that would be the crazy push to end things. And it's like, if we roll back over here, what would that be? That would be a fake out above the previous resistance. No, that would be a trend break. And I think at that point, it would just be a very questionable thing. Very, very questionable thing. So total 2 here actually looks better than total because of Ethereum. Ethereum obviously has been a pretty strong coin the last few months. So that's my thought on total 2 here, is that this, there's a few things. Bitcoin looks the worst, I'm going to be honest. Total looks a little bit better. Total 2 looks a little bit even better. So it's like, you gotta develop a whole picture here and just be ready to act on, when you have certain criteria meet certain things that you're watching here. So that's my total 3 or total 2 opinion. Total 3, I don't think I had any specific chart up on here. So yeah, I guess the one thing here I will cover as well is Bitcoin dominance. Bitcoin dominance, this is a little bit of a dirty chart here. Let's see if I could go over to, I think I had a cleaner chart on here. Bitcoin dominance, it's really is still looking pretty bearish. And this was also predicted pretty well by myself. A lot of you guys watched this, happen here from the start here to the next leg here to the loss here. We kind of watched each of those moves play out, and we were expecting them. The only caveat was it was really only Ethereum taking that dominance. We thought it would be a much broader altcoin rally, but it really was just Ethereum and maybe a few other coins, but really was just Ethereum taking that dominance. So, Bitcoin dominance still looks pretty bearish here to me. I don't think that there's anything here that tells me like, hey, that's it for alts. I mean, logically speaking, since the low, since, FTX right here, crash, this is when the whole cycle started. This is something we haven't seen. Our biggest pullback here was, I think, 2024, so about a year ago. And look, it was V-shaped up. This is far from a V-shape. If we pull out the bars pattern here and just look, we're way past that point of a V-shape even. That would have happened right here, but no. We've continued a more prolonged downtrend. So to me, this does look good for alts. Unless I'd say this, 60%, even though it's far away. And if that 60% continues to say resistance, we're in that point where the next month or two could just be alts go higher. Some alts, I should say. I don't want to be too broad here because most of the alts are just dead. But some alts go higher, and Bitcoin really might not make a new high. And that might explain why I just said that Bitcoin looks the weakest, That could be a good theory that's developing here. And I'm just open to it, and I'm trying to break down the most logical theories here that make sense to me based on what I've seen here and what makes sense based on all the new information we have in these cycles. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Bitcoin dominance. If you guys have any questions about that, let me know. But beyond that, I think that those are really the main few things here. Ethereum, not too much more to really add to the conversation. I think that total and Bitcoin really sum up a lot of it. I think I posted something here on Ethereum not too long ago. I think it was the monthly rolling VWAP, and I forget exactly. It might be this chart here. No, one of the charts here I had basically was showing. There might be the index here. No, not really, but this will kind of give us the idea that Ethereum's also at that point where, look, these VWAPs are so powerful here, guys. Losing that monthly rolling VWAP after a prolonged uptrend, it usually signals a potential trend shift. So also something that I'm watching strongly here. We could see each of these strong uptrends. Losing that was, hey, watch out. So I think that same thing with Bitcoin. Bitcoin needs to regain this quarterly VWAP to be in a safe area. I think that this needs to happen quickly, and the quicker it happens, the better. The longer we stay under it, the worse. And Ethereum has the same view, in my opinion. If we look at Ethereum here, I think it needs to regain that monthly pretty soon here, because historically speaking, that is the first step of a nice drawdown. Whether it's 5-10% or a month or two, we can't say for sure, but what it does mean is that prices go lower after that. So those are really the two things. If I would give you anything for you guys to watch yourselves, watch the monthly here on Bitcoin, on Ethereum, and the quarterly VWAP here on Bitcoin. I think that those are really two simple, cool things for you just to watch and really say, that's really our check we need to go back into like a safety area. So yeah, that was really my only thoughts on Ethereum. Sol here, Sol, I made a few posts about this, I think over the last few weeks as well, saying Sol looks good. It's hard to print that this looks bad, even though it could be looked at as a rising wedge. I consider it more of like an ascending triangle. If you just look at how Sol puts in its tops, it doesn't do it like that. This to me, this grind up pattern like this is usually a bullish one. I'd say 90%, 85% of the time, this is a bullish pattern. You still have that 10%, but for the most part, I'd consider that a bullish pattern. And same thing, use the quarterly VWAP and the monthly. As long as Sol's above that monthly, I think that this pattern stays intact. So, I'm going to be watching this closely here, because to me, Sol, it's the best looking alt right now. And we could hope that this keeps its bullish stance. And this would push to about 260. So this is a beautiful trade for myself, even. I'm keeping close eyes on. For any of you guys that do take your own trades, or at least shorter term, leverage trades. If Sol, this would be more of a reactive, considering it's, it's consolidating pretty hard here. We can break above that 210, 215 and be a little stable up there. I'd take the trade there on breakout, targeting about the 240, 250 range. And a simple, loss of that previous high being your invalidation. So that's a good trade that might be printing here. And, on the downside, similar trade. If this fails, which, I think that's kind of why I'm saying we're at the point where have two plans, guys. It's cool. It's really good for your ego to call things with high conviction. I do it sometimes. I just think we're at a really pivotal point where I don't think it's the best environment to do that. So that's why I'm preparing myself for both, having very clear set plans so I don't get blindsided, so hopefully that makes sense there, guys. So yeah, I just want a little, you know, little fast rundown there. Hopefully that all makes sense to you guys. If you guys have any questions there, you know, or if anything I said there was confusing, definitely let me know. And yeah, there's a few other things I'll cover here. Then we'll pop up and wrap up here on the order books and looking at some order flow, some higher level things. But those are really my thoughts. Hopefully that's a, you know, somewhat of a clear, concise rundown of what I'm watching and what I think that you guys should also be watching, to not overcomplicate where we're at, and if you're a trader, to really put yourself in a winning position. So I think that that's really the point we should be at in this type of the cycle, this time in the cycle, to put yourself in a winning position no matter what happens, you know. So yeah, I think that the only other thing I really wanted to cover here on TradingView was you know, XRP. First, starting off with the beloved XRP US oil chart. You know, this has been an awesome chart. It really has. For you guys that have watched that, I got a thread going, probably with probably over 100 posts in that thread. Really has been an awesome thread, and you know, because it's been an awesome chart. This has been such a way more of a clear chart than XRP USD. You know, and for you guys that have watched the progression of that, I'm sure you guys have agreed. You know, it's been a pretty cool thing. Hopefully, you guys have learned from that as well. So, you know, for me to put it the simplest way, as I've been posting about, XRP is continuing to hold that previous resistance of its range, which that's what we want to see. But what we don't want to see is it being lost. We see this being lost. This is going to correlate, I think, with, you know, Sol breaking the monthly VWAP here, Bitcoin losing the 105, 106 to 108, Ethereum, you know, fully losing that monthly VWAP, total, you know, losing the quarterly VWAP. You guys see how I like to find confluence between all the charts here? Hopefully that makes sense to you. You see how I don't just look at one thing and say, hey, if this happens, it's like, hey, all these things are kind of lining up. So it's like, you know, it's like a fireworks show, you know. The first one happens and the second one, it's like, you want to put them in proper order. And that's kind of what I'm saying here with, you know, this chart even is it's probably going to be, you know, if this happens, it's going to be met with a lot of those other things we just talked about. And I think that would be the point where things do get concerning. And, you know, I'll say it straight up that I think things would be concerning at that point. We're not just there yet, but we're close enough to the level where I think we need to keep our eyes peeled. And, you know, this is the best chart to really do that on, I think. So I'll continue to watch here. We obviously know what we need to see for this to break out. Got a perfect trend right there. If I drew another trend, love trend lines, super powerful stuff. We want to see that regain. And then more importantly, we'd want to see this regain as well. You know, until then, this is kind of just a choppy range. But like I said, if we lose this, unfortunately, guys, XRP would be looking back at like 250, 240. And I think at that point, it'd be a, you know, very questionable thing. I think that, you know, it's not what we want to see. I think that, you know, being at the type of nail biting, I think time we're at here, I don't think I'd want to see this happen. It wouldn't make me very comfortable continuing to hold XRP, at least in the short term, midterm, you know, expecting higher prices. So I just want to be real with you, with you guys there. But as of now, it is holding. So throw this up on your chart as well. Continue to watch. I got alerts set, so I'll obviously update as well. But considering we have a 7-8 month range here, breaking out was awesome. You know, right when we broke that, as I predicted, this made a new high. XRP made a new high, not by much, but it did make a new high. And then we got shot back down, and we've just been, you know, chopping back up there. So this is a very important chart here, I think, guys. And the XRP USD, you know, I think this is a very important one as well. Let me see if I get a cleaner chart here. Let's see here. You know, I've got a lot of stuff on a lot of these charts, but this really does sum up a lot of what I'm talking about as well. You know, I didn't have something cleaned up here, but you know, we could draw a few things here. I mean, I don't need to put much on here to really show my opinion on where we're at, but overall, it's like, This is an important level that I have drawn here. Very, very important level. What does this coincide with? This probably coincides perfectly, maybe a little bit higher, with that US oil chart. And technically speaking, we could see, guys, that this was the resistance that we were stuck under. You know, I consider this 2 levels. We could see all those rejections. See this retest right here. See where we lost it, all these rejections. This reserve announcement, ridiculous day. Remember, I'm sure you guys remember that. That was an absolutely ridiculous day. All rejections here. See that? This is really trying to act as support. The last time we saw something like that was right here. Sure, it did bounce up, but it didn't continue to bounce. So I think that that's really like the last point where, once again, I say, if we hit this all-time high here, if we have this SFP here, you know, taking out that high, losing this level, US oil also loses this level. I'm just being real with you guys. It's not the best look. You know, it's not the best look. So I'm hoping here for all the XRP fans and for a lot of you guys that follow me that, you know, that this does hold here, and this is in the process of basing out in the very near term future. So I think if it doesn't, you know, we could see that really quick. Sure, I'm fine with that. But as usual, retesting, losing that, I'm just going to be honest with you guys to keep expectations in check. That's not going to be a good scenario. So once again, don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I don't want to be the guy who's just, you know, sitting here all the time telling you guys we're going to $5. To the person who asked me before, I think if XRP can break above, you know, that 340, I think a reasonable target is the $5 to $7 range. You know, we would of course need to see a more expansive move across the entire market. We probably want to see Sol back up to 250, 260. We want to see Ethereum break that all-time high. Bitcoin, who knows? Maybe it would still be chilling out here. But that's really what I'm viewing here. And if not, I'll be pretty disappointed. And you know why? It's because I've held XRP for a very long time. And sure, you know, very good profit with my average being, you know, in the 20s, 30s. But for 7-8 years to only hit its previous all-time high and fall back down, it's pretty embarrassing. Wouldn't you guys say? You know, pretty embarrassing. So yeah, that's really my only opinion here, my only thoughts, and I want to keep it straight up, but it's really my thoughts is, you know, we want to see the bulls step up here quick, very, very quick here, kind of break out of this wedge that we're even forming right now. I just don't think that there's much time to really, you know, spend anymore. With all the little levels that we just looked at, hopefully all those confluence make sense to you guys now. We don't want to see this be lost. We don't want to see Total lose that. We don't want to see Bitcoin lose that. We don't want to see Ethereum lose that level. We don't want to see Bitcoin dominance go back above 60. Everything's in line where it's like, hey, if we have a month and a half left of this cycle, or who knows, even if it's not this cycle, but this trend, then hey, this is the time where it needs to really, really step up. And bulls need to really, really show their, you know, show their strength. So hopefully that makes sense to all you guys. I guess last thing here is I'll cover is XLM. You know, XLM's a good, very interesting chart here. You guys have anything else? You know, feel free to ask, and just a few other things here, and then we'll wrap it up. Hopefully you guys learned something or got some insights here. I know I've said a lot, but you know, I'm trying to share all the way I'm viewing the market, at least right now. And XLM is kind of a really interesting chart. I posted this probably a month and a half, 2 months ago, just showing like, hey, this, you know, on high time frame, this chart also looks like, you know, logically speaking, it looks like the next month and a half we should see like a big push like that. You know, maybe to $1, $1.50, maybe $2 if things get really, really crazy. That might be a little too optimistic, but you know, it's, I don't know, the chart tells me that, should I say. So I'll continue to watch XLM here, a very similar view. Obviously, it follows XRP nearly perfectly in lockstep, you know, but overall, that's kind of my view on XLM is, you know, it'd be one of the coins you'd probably want to be interested in if this market does get pushed higher. So yeah, we lose that range, do you sell all your XP or still keep a portion? Personally, I would be very keen on selling a good chunk of it. You know, it could be looked back at as a bad decision, but I think with everything I know about charts, you know, I think that that's a warning signal, you know. It's a very big warning signal for anyone who's been in that coin for a long time. Does that mean it will never go to $5-10? No. But, you know, does it mean you might have another year or two of grueling price action? Likely. So yeah, we'll see when the time comes. You know, I don't want to get too ahead of myself here, but I'm just breaking it down so we're not surprised if that time comes, you know. Under promise yourself and over deliver. Okay, let's see what else you guys had here. I heard you in Spaces saying you think this might go into 2026, like we hit a local top in October, everyone thinks it's over, we continue higher in 2026. That would be the scenario of the 4-year cycle being done. Yes, I think that would be the exact scenario. I think we would see some top come in here soon, whether it's not in. And then, you know, early 2026, we'd see prices go higher. And that'd be the point where the breaking news would be, hey, we're no longer in a 4-year cycle. You know, Bitcoin just broke out of its 4-year cycle theory. So you're absolutely right. Since we're talking about how are you looking at HBAR fighting at the top of the yearly VWAP? I'll take a look at that. Yeah, I'd absolutely take a look at that real quick for you guys. HBAR's been a pretty decent coin here. Let's see if we got the yearly on here. Very good. Yeah, very good view you had here. You know, I think that is kind of an over-under level where, once again, kind of confirms what we've been talking about here, guys. The market's at a very important level. And if you threw a little multiplier band on here, we'd probably have down about 20 cents before things get questionable. And I think it's the same concept. A low should be getting put in here. You know, whether that's a fake out, then the low's in or not, a low should be getting put in here. The more I look at charts, the more that this stuff kind of, you know, lines up. Hopefully you guys are seeing this as I'm going. It's like the more we look at, the more it's like everything's lining up to where a low's got to be in, or a lot of charts get very, very questionable. Bitcoin's chart arguably is broken. You know, Ethereum, XRP, those charts get broken. And I don't think we're at the point in the cycle where we want to see charts get broken. You know, we want to see dips get bought up. That's what the optimistic end of cycle stuff should look like. Thoughts on gold? Yeah, I'll check out gold here. Let's see what else you guys had. Tom, thanks for popping in, Tom. Appreciate it, man. Thank you, Dom. You're literally the best out there. Thank you, G. Much appreciated. Would be great if you posted more on X. Yeah, you know, I go in waves, should I say. You know, there's a lot of stuff I want to share on X. I've been working on a lot of things, guys. A lot of super cool stuff. I'd love to share, but, you know, a lot of people, you know, they take advantage of stuff. And I guess I'm not at the point yet of wanting to share a lot of stuff I've been working on. Dom, thanks for your content. I love it. Helps me in trading. Much appreciated there, man. Chainlink. Yeah, let's take a look at Chainlink, gold, and then I'll pop over the browser and finish up. Thanks everybody for continuing to, you know, stick around here about the hour mark here. So much appreciated here, everyone. Chainlink, I did mention that on the space I was in the other day. I think that it's also, you know, a very good looking coin. If we take these off right here, just keep the monthly on. Let's see here. So I haven't really charted Link too much recently. You know, really all I have here is a target I was hoping to hit, I think probably back then, and we kind of fell a little bit short of it. But, you know, overall, I think Chainlink, it's a hard chart. You know why it's a hard chart? Because even just looking at just like a bigger, you know, bigger view of all this, it's like it's got a lot of room to run before the chart's broken. You know, Chainlink can technically do this and do that and do this and do that and still be completely fine, you know? So, you know, I guess I don't have too many thoughts on Chainlink. I'm not going to force thoughts on it. Really, I look at the charts and get some downloads about it. And right now it's like, Chainlink's a good chart. Absolutely. It looks a lot better than most of these coins. But it's like, it's got so much room. It could go down and it'll still be fine. Unlike a lot of these charts, a lot of these charts, it's like, I think they're close to being broken. Chainlink here, I think all you'd really want to see is 26 get cleared, and you'd be looking at $35, $40 target, So Chainlink, I guess to sum it up, Chainlink is it's a really good looking chart compared to the majority of the market. But I don't have concrete thoughts on it. Crypto Cub. Oh man. Well, thanks for popping in, man. Does gold need to top first before Bitcoin alts can really expand? I haven't looked at too much of that recently. I used to do a lot of that gold analysis, but the way gold's been moving here, last time I looked at gold, and Crypto Cub knows, it was about at $1,900, and I basically said, our view was gold's about to go crazy. This was back in, I think it was 2023, and gold has went crazy, but as for its correlation to crypto, I just don't think it has crypto is enough. I know a few people have some thoughts on that. Gold needs to top before crypto goes higher. But at the end of the day, guys, let's lay them over. If it will work, let's see if we could. Actually, we'll go back here, pull up a gold chart on here. We lay over crypto to gold, and let's be real here. TradingView sometimes has some bugs here. Let's see. See if we can lay it over real quick, because some people do believe that gold needs to top before crypto goes higher, but like I said, guys, I mean, gold has continued to run, and Bitcoin has continued to run basically alongside with it. We look right here. I mean, look, it's they both have ran perfectly together. So no, I'm not going to attach myself to gold needs to top first. Maybe alts, sure, there could be some truth to that, but I don't have enough information to talk about it right now. I'd have to really do some deep analysis on that. But overall, I mean, gold is it's just a beast. And to try to call tops on it, I haven't, because of this exact reason. I think we're at the point in the economy where gold should go higher. It should continue to go higher, in my opinion. So since X is such trash, maybe YouTube's a better platform. Maybe it is. Yeah, maybe it is. Maybe I'll start to do some more video content here. It's a lot of things I'd want to do. Just things have came up, and yeah, unfortunately, a lot of this market now is a lot of people in this market. They just want freebies. They want this given to them. They want all this free content. They want this. It's like people that have spent thousands of hours, like myself, and I'm sure many of you guys that are watching as well. It takes a lot of time to be able to formulate and share thoughts and teach other people how to look at the market. It's not just like super easy thing, so I appreciate all you guys that do, really appreciate that. Crypto Cup, yeah, I remember trading gold from 1800 to 2200. I took a nap and woke up. Yeah. Crazy times. All right, guys, well, that really covers most of what I wanted to share today. Hopefully most of you guys enjoyed that stream. I guess the only last few things I wanted to cover here was the order books, just very quickly. I'm not going to go heavy into them, but the order books are clear. The order books, we got a little bit of stuff down here, but for the most part, these order books are not really what's going to be stopping us or hurting us. This is empty as can be here on Bitcoin. XRP, very similar. Empty as can be. We had a little bit of a sell wall here, but nothing crazy. I mean, same thing here. We got nothing big. Anything that's not green or yellow, there's really nothing really to look at. So I just wanted to throw these in with them, talk about them for a minute like I just did. At the order books, there's nothing really to look at. We're in a low volatility. There's no big orders that are going to really stop us from dropping or stop us from pumping. It's really just who's pushing higher. And that's why I want to bring up this here, guys. This here's part of my custom charts that I've made. Spent a lot of time on building these, and I wanted to just share. It's like, if we go look at the last 30 days here, just pulling tick data from my database here, but we could show that the flows have been down. These are the 30-day flows of the spot market, just cumulative volume delta. We've just been getting pushed down. Push down. I mean, a big, Binance has just sold off a tremendous amount. Coinbase has sold off a tremendous amount. Bybit, You know, OKX, Krakens have been pretty flat, but they don't make much of a difference. And I just want to share that. It's like until this flips, especially with these low order books here, you know, it's not, we're not going to see a prolonged revival. And I think that that's the important thing that we need to keep in mind here, guys, that, you know, the order flow doesn't lie. And it says that not many people are too interested yet. So this is my job to keep eyes on this and, you know, tell you guys when this shifts. But I wanted to throw this in here because, you know, that's really been the case. But with XRP, very interestingly, really the main culprit here of selling has been Upbit. You know, I've showed this a lot, and you guys probably know. Upbit, I mean, man, all they do is they find XRP under their bed and sell it. It's like 275 million XRP sold. I mean, we're talking almost $1 billion market sold, right? Now, this isn't like a direct metric to say this is how much was totally bought or sold, because if you guys understand how market orders work, you know, for every market order, there's a corresponding limit order that's taking the other side of that trade. So all this is looking at is the amount of it's basically adding up all of the market orders, right? So all the time someone logs in and clicks buy or sell and gets filled immediately. And $275 million is the net delta of market orders. So there's been about 275 million XRP, my bad, market sold more than market bought. And, you know, it's crazy to me because if you look at something like Coinbase has been pretty bullish on XRP, surprisingly. Even Binance, I mean, Binance has not been too bearish. Bybit doesn't have too much of an impact. They got a little bit pushing down. Kraken, nothing too crazy. Bitstamp looks very similar. But I find it interesting here because if we look at this compared to Bitcoin, it's a lot different, you know? There's been a lot more bullish. I mean, let's just look at Coinbase just as a comparison. Look at Coinbase flows over the last 30 days on Bitcoin compared to XRP. You know, people are more interested in market buying XRP versus Bitcoin. Does that mean too much to price? No, not as of now, because obviously, you know, there's other venues that have more of an impact, but it's something to keep in mind. And it's like the interest is there in XRP, but it has translated to a higher price? No. But what it does give us an idea of is there's still people interested in it, absolutely. More interested in Bitcoin, arguably. You know? So yeah, that's really all I had here, guys. Last chart, I don't know if I should cover this. I guess just to wrap it up all, was the stock to flow chart, the days until the halving. And it kind of just prints my exact thoughts here, guys. Look at this color here. It's about the, you know, about the thousandth day since the halving, right? That's where tops get put in. And look where we're at. We're just about at that point right there, similar to the charts that I was just showing you guys here, you know, just another way to look at it. So just keep an eyes out here, guys. The next 2 months are going to be very fun. I'm going to try to do more streams, be a little bit more active, because I think that this is going to be a super interesting point, you know, a very, very super interesting point. So yeah, appreciate it, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that stream. Try to cover a lot of things here. See if you guys have any other last questions, and I'll wrap it up here. I guess the last thing I'll show you guys here is my custom liquidation dashboard. Super cool here. Just a little view of it. Kind of look at liquidations. I was gonna post this, but wanted to share it here. Look at this guy that got liquidated today. $15 million long position on OKX on Bitcoin. Absolutely got taken out. That's a rarity. 15 million. Imagine that, guys. Imagine that. Yeah, I just want to show you guys this super, super cool. Shows me, you know, here's my time picker. So we want to see the last 15 minutes. Here's total liquidations. We could see, you know, where they were through, how many of them were longs versus shorts, you know, what pairs they were. We could kind of look at the whole feed of them, exact liquidations. Been a super useful thing for me. And yeah, I think that we basically had a pretty long liquidation here. Pretty crazy here. 15 million is the biggest one I've seen. Pretty crazy. People always get taken out on stretchers here with these crazy days like this. It's really something to observe. So let's see if you guys have anything else here, and I will wrap it up. Be very interested if you did a paid service. Yeah, it's still on my mind, you know, a little. The thing is, guys, if I had a paid service, it wouldn't just be a paid service, you know. It would be a very, very, you know, unique thing where you guys would get max value, and I think that it's going to take me some time to build. I'm heading in that direction, but it wouldn't just be a, hey, you know, join my group for, you know, custom chart analysis. It would be like a really, really in-depth, you know, one of a kind type thing, which, you know, I got my eyes on that and I'm heading in that direction, but it wouldn't happen in the next, you know, few weeks or maybe even month or two. I'd be about 6 months down the line, but I've had hundreds of DMs about it. So I know that there's interest in there. I'm just saying, I can't come out and ask for money without it being top notch, something you guys have never seen before, and even, you know, the community's never seen before. But I am heading in that direction, so we will see. You wouldn't mind sharing besides VWAP? What are the other top indicators you recommend learning? You know, really just price action. And I know that's funny, but really price action. The more you just look at candles and look at charts, that's going to be your best bet. You know, that's really going to be your best bet. And as for indicators, master VWAPs, master them. VWAPs and master volume profile. And once you got those down, start looking at order books. That's really all you need, in my opinion, to nail the market on a high time frame, low time frame, mid time frame. Very easy to, you know, really nail the market with those tools. Let's see here. When can we buy the tools you're building? Like I said, you know, if I came out with a group, guys, or a service or whatever, it would be where you guys would get access to a lot of custom tools like this, you know. And for me to make these publicly available and stable, it'll take me some time. It's a lot of dev work there. But I'm just saying, if I did come out with something, that's why it'll take me some time. It won't just be, you know, a little bit of, you know, private this, that. It would be, hey guys, you guys get access to proprietary tools, you know. So we'll see. I'll keep you updated if there's any progress on that front. What are you using for order book SKUs now? Trading Light went downhill. You know, I was using Trading Light. It was gone for about 3 months. I went back. I had like a month on there. And then I'm like, you know, I'm not giving any of my money to these people. So I'm in the progress of making my own order book SKUs. I'm not going to rely on anyone because honestly, those are such a powerful tool, and me not even be able to look at them in the last few weeks, it's been you know, pretty unfortunate to me because you guys remember, I'm sure you guys remember, those really are powerful, really are powerful. So I'm in the process right now of making my own. One guy got blasted today too. That would be amazing. I remember you mentioning it some months ago. It'd be amazing learning from you. Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to do it. It's just if I came out with anything, it would need to be absolutely top notch, top value. So, um, yeah. Can we get a hold of the liquidation dashboard? Kind of piggybacking on what I said earlier, you know, if there's a point where I make it public, it would kind of be a full blown, you know, package. I agree. You shouldn't be sharing too much on X. Yeah, you know, it's questionable, Tom. I can't wait. Awesome. Thanks again. Well, thanks, guys. Much appreciated here. I think that that's really all I wanted to cover. It was good to be back. It was about a 3.5 months since I did a stream, but went pretty smoothly. You know, there's always so much information I want to get out in a short time frame, and you know, to keep you guys interested and engaged as well. So much appreciate everyone that joined. If you guys don't already subscribe or like, feel free to. You know, it definitely helps me out. Even though I don't do too much on YouTube, it's always nice to have a little bit of support there. So looking forward to signing up. Paying just for order book SKUs would be worth it. Going to get it going ASAP. Yeah, absolutely. That's my thoughts. I'm not gonna rely on anybody else. So, you know, might as well just make my own, and there we go. No, you know, no, don't have to worry about anyone else keeping them up to date or whatever else. Thanks, guys. Yeah, you guys have an awesome weekend. thanks again for joining, everybody. And yeah, we will see you guys soon. Thanks again.